All right, let's get into it. We're going to talk about one of the most powerful and, frankly, one of the most hidden parts of the American legal system. It's a process that completely changes the lives of thousands and thousands of kids and their parents every year, and there's a huge movement pushing for some major reform.
So you've probably never heard this term before. It's not something they teach in most civics classes. But reformers have given this really chilling name, this civil death penalty, to a legal process that affects tens of thousands of children. And they use it to describe the ultimate power the state has over a family. So what are we actually talking about? It's called termination of parental rights, or TPR. And this is a court order that permanently, and I mean permanently and irreversibly, severs the legal bond between a parent and their child. This isn't just about who has custody. This is about legally erasing the parent-child relationship. For the families that go through it, it feels exactly like what its critics call it, a death penalty for the family. And the scale of this, well, it's just staggering. It's estimated that since the late 90s, states have used this process to permanently end over 2 million parent-child relationships. Think about that. 2 million children legally cut off from their parents forever.
To put that number in perspective, it means that more than 1 out of every 100 kids in this country will have their legal connection to their parents terminated by the government before they even turn 18. So this is not some rare last resort thing. It's become a standard routine part of our child welfare system.
So you have to ask, how in the world did we get here? How did something so extreme become so common? Well, to figure that out, you really have to look at the history. Because what you find is that this incredibly powerful legal tool was never, ever designed to be used the way it is today. If you go way back, the first modern adoption law in 1851 was all about private adoptions, just making them official. Then 100 years later, the first TPR laws came about, but they were used very rarely, mostly just as a paperwork step for kids who had truly been abandoned. But then 1997 happened, and the Adoption and Safe Families Act, or ASFA, was passed, and it just set off an absolute explosion in the number of terminations filed by the state. And this right here really gets to the core of what reformers are arguing. The tool's original purpose has been completely flipped on its head. It started as a way to help kids whose parents had already left the picture. Now it's a weapon used in court by the state, often against parents who are desperately fighting to get their kids back. Now, this massive change wasn't an accident. It didn't just happen. Reformers argue that very specific federal policies created what they call perverse incentives. Basically, policies that push the entire system towards separating families instead of helping them. And the heart of it all is that 1997 law, ASFA. The second a child is placed in foster care, this strict 15-month clock starts ticking. And from day one, the state starts what's called concurrent planning. That means they're supposedly working to send the child home, while at the exact same time, they're preparing to have that same child adopted by someone else. So if a parent, who's often just struggling with poverty, maybe housing or addiction, can't jump through every single hoop in that short time frame, the state is basically forced to file for permanent termination. And then you follow the money. This is a huge critique of the system. Federal law literally gives states cash bonuses for every child they adopt out of foster care. So you can see the incentive, right? There's a powerful financial reason to terminate parental rights and push for adoption, instead of making bigger investments in the community support services that could actually keep families together in the first place. So you take these tight timelines, you add the financial incentives, and what you get is a massive human cost. It's led to maybe the most tragic and completely unintended consequence of this whole system. We are creating a generation of kids who have no legal family at all. The words of people who have actually lived this are they're powerful. A group of Black mothers who had their families torn apart by this system called it a violent legal mechanism that kills families. And they said ASFA is the civil death penalty that enacts the execution. It really just shows you the deep, deep trauma this causes. So here's the crucial question. What happens when the state successfully terminates a parent's rights, but then they can't find an adoptive family for that child? Well, that child becomes what's known as a legal orphan. They are stuck in a terrible limbo, with no legal connection to their birth family and no new family to call their own. And the data shows a really stark picture of systemic bias. This system does not affect everyone equally. Black children are more than twice as likely as white children to have their parental rights taken away. And for Native American kids, the rate is even higher, which continues this country's long, awful history of forced family separation. And for the tens of thousands of kids who age out of foster care every year, many of them as legal orphans with no family to rely on, the outcomes are absolutely devastating. They face much higher rates of homelessness, unemployment, jail time, you name it. It's a personal crisis for them, and honestly, a huge long-term cost for all of us.
So, faced with all of this, a growing movement of reformers, lawyers, parents, former foster youth, are demanding a complete change in how we do things. They're asking a really basic question about what the whole point of the child welfare system should even be. Is a system that's built on surveillance, removal, and termination, is that really the best way to keep kids safe? Reformers are saying no, absolutely not. They argue that we have to replace this system focused on punishment with a new one that's focused on support and preservation.
And the core idea is actually pretty simple, but it's also revolutionary. It's just stop punishing families for being poor. We need to move away from severing families as the go-to solution and instead pour resources into the things that help parents provide a safe home. You know, things like affordable housing, mental health care, and real substance abuse treatment.
And that boils down to some specific policy changes. First, get rid of those rigid timelines and those harmful financial bonuses from ASFA. Second, make it a real priority to keep kids with their families, or, if that's just not safe, with relatives in kinship care. And this last one is so important. Go back to the original idea. Only terminate parental rights if you already have a permanent adoptive family waiting in the wings. That alone would stop the creation of legal orphans. And that really leaves us with this final, really challenging question that gets to the absolute heart of this whole debate. If the stated goal of our entire child welfare system is the well-being of children, then why on earth have we designed a system that so often produces the worst possible outcome for a kid, having no legal family at all?